Okay, so we're going to do an interesting Nam Academy. As per usual, we are running a little bit late, and so then, but something happens unusual. Nothing's working out today. It's an interesting day. I came in, the phones aren't working. Like a phone kam nahi si karde. And then I'm trying to get I had this whole session planned out, but the printer's not working. Everything's a struggle. And so, what do we do when nothing's working? So, what's that about? So, when nothing works, I'm just going to speak from my own experience because I don't know about you, but I just don't know much about me either. But when nothing works, that's going to be when nothing works, there's an important thing to consider. And I've learned this over time the hard way. So this kind of falls into the category of stress. You know how 95% of our stress is? What? I just made up that number, by the way. Now, I don't have stats for that. That's just my intuition. And you know that's probably true. 95% of stress is predictable. So I just kind of pick a number. Really what I could say is vast majority, which is really 95%. Of stress. And one of the ways, so that manifests, it doesn't all come the same way though. It doesn't all, so sari ek cheez nahi hai jidon like stress asi predict kar sakte hain. It's several different themes. So today is a good example of a theme that I just want to illustrate. Is when nothing works and we force it. You ever do that? Nothing is working and you just keep forcing it until it works. What happens? Does anything good work? Does anything good happen? Like, you know, you open it just happened on the weekend. We're putting the fan back into the box because don't need it anymore, it's cold out. And we're trying to disassemble the bottom thing. And it's like one of those plastic things, right, that you have to just kind of click out. And it wasn't coming apart. One side came apart, the other side didn't. So what did I do? Good male that I am, I forced it. And it broke. It just wasn't meant to be opened that way. I had never opened it before. I say the male thing because this is a quality of men more so than women, but it is all things. When nothing's working and you force it, when your relationship's not working, you're dating someone, like, you know, you've dated someone 5 times. And you're like, not working. But you keep going at it. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years later, still dating. And then there's the big breakup, right? You tried to force the relationship that wasn't meant to be. Despite every obstacle. So, relationship banni nahi si. But tusi takka kita. And so whenever we do force, initially, right? Initially, nothing seems to work. That's a signal from the universe that maybe something you should change. So when something's not working, right, our gut reaction is to stress out. And then our next reaction is to force it, like children. So that's what we are emotionally, children. So pehla assi tension lenne, kyun nahi hunda. And then assi takka karde hain. And then whatever it is breaks. And it breaks. and then it's more work. Not less. You've been in the relationship 10 years. It's not like you didn't do nothing in 10 years. You formed bridges of attachment. So it's anything you do for 10 years, you're going to have a strong connection. And the harder it is going to be for that to break. And if it was never meant to be, it will break. But now you got a pile of stress. Now you got a bunch of trauma. Now you got a bunch of things that came from you trying to force something that wasn't meant to be. You didn't listen to the signals of the universe. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ. ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੋਣੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ. You know, I've talked about this before. This building that we're leasing, really nice space, but before this space, I was trying to find a space for Nam, and I was looking at this lease across from the Peter Lloyd Hospital for 6 months, 4 months. I was like talking to lawyers and getting this, the wording right and this and that, and in my head I was like, yeah, it would be great. Perfect, right next to the hospital, because at the time I was working at the hospital, all my referrals would come and we would just make it work and it would be great. Only one problem, it was just never meant to be. I later learned that would have been horrible. That wouldn't have worked at all. But for 6 months, stress, worry, dreams, time, money, energy, waste. But the universe was very kind. It didn't let me sign the lease. On the very last day, I went to sign the lease. It was that simple, just sign. It was like the Friday, and I was like, can't do it. Can't do it. Sorry I wasted your time, Mr. Lease person. I'm not doing it. That afternoon, for whatever reason, I had a meeting of someone here at this weird address. I signed the lease on Monday. But if I'd signed there, right, I'd be stuck at that place for 5 years. Suboptimal. So, when nothing works, and we interpret that as like something wrong with us, and we have to sort of push and force, and then it results in forcing it, and then it breaks, and then it creates more work in the end. So I see a lot simpler if we just listen. So this morning I had a nothing works thing. I wanted to talk about schemas, which are a form of, is one of the many ways to categorize personality disorders. Very useful. Early childhood development, but nothing was working. The printer wasn't working. And then the printer got it working, and then it stopped working, and I had to change the paper. And it's doing this one thing it's never done, the printer. Prints like a dream. And then when it did print it sideways, so half the things, and then, take a hint, Dr. Gill, it's not a good thing to talk about today. Oh yeah, I don't believe in that stuff, that's all, ooh. Okay, that's fine. It's okay for you not to believe in it, but if you don't take the hints get harder and harder. So let's say I went and taught that thing. And then somebody over here goes all suicidal and crazy. And then this and that. I have to think about what's going to happen. And it's happened long enough that I've learned, although clearly not, I tried 5 different things. But really, it's probably just not meant to be today. And so you can really help your life But really thinking about, okay, if it's not working out, yeah, try a little. Don't be a giver-upper, right? Like, give it some good, honest attempts. But there's a limit, right? Like, if you're going on a date with somebody, and you're like, horrible date. And the next time, and the next time, and the next time, and then 10 times later there's a good date. But like, you're like, one good date in 10? Is that like a good starting? Is that going to predict success? But your schemas, your childhood sort of maladaptive strategies will tell you, yeah, because it didn't work out 9 out of 10 times, that increases the chances it's going to work out. That's the logic. It's gambler's logic, actually. ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਦਮੀ ਜੂਆ ਖੇਡਦਾ ਹੈ, when someone gambles, the longer it goes not working, the more they think it's going to work. It's an odd logic, but it's how it works. And so that hope, right? That's trauma. That's kind of a psychological construct, hoping against hope. That a lot of addicted people, or many, not all, but there's extreme. Have you heard of base jumping? Because when you have base jumping, pahada to jump karte hai with a parachute. You must have heard about that. It's called base jumping, or from like really tall buildings, like skyscrapers. Sound like a good idea? Probably not. Do people do it? Yes, they do. Do intelligent people do it? Yes, they do. Psychologists and physicists and all sorts of intelligent people. People who have lives. People who have, like, kids. Kids. They will do this. Extreme thrill seeking. You ask them, why do you do it? Haven't died yet. That doesn't reduce the risk of death with the next jump, but it definitely allows the psychology to sort of say, yeah, let's give it one more go. No seatbelt. In India, it's a big thing. So in India, seatbelt nahi pahunde na. It's like, I'm a Canadian, I get ridiculed when I go to India, I put on my seatbelt. They do a funny thing. Right when they get into the city, everyone puts on their seatbelt because, like, you're going to get a ticket. So it's a ticket mil jandi hai. Otherwise, hugely fatal car accidents happen in India all the time. It's a common thing. All the time you hear about it. But there's this weird psychology. If something bad didn't happen, that means that I can just, by not wearing my seatbelt, I increase the likelihood of nothing bad happening. It's like a weird thing. And if I wear a seatbelt, it's kind of like, oh, it acknowledges the risk. I'm just trying to, like, the mind has so many, like, weird, twisty, turny, like, rationalizations. So when something's not working, it'll find all sorts of clever ways to force it. And a common one in the West is, like, the woman who wants to change her man, right? Like, that's like the number one thing in domestic violence, right? He might change. And after, like, the 25th domestic violence incident, maybe he might change, cancel the charges. And this is, that's an extreme example, but there's everyday examples. The next drink might be okay, even though 20 years of drinking hasn't worked out. Well, maybe I can have a drink. And in that moment, you are insane. But there's millions of people who are insane, and so you can't say that it's insanity. It's just a psychological quirk that we all have in relationship to something. I know chips make me at an increased risk of heart disease. My dad had heart disease at a younger age. Does that stop me from eating chips? Not always. And I certainly don't think of his heart disease. We have these things that enable us to ignore the universal signals. So, this Nam Academy is really to just kind of suggest to you that if something's not working, maybe today is just not the day for it. Wait and see if you still want to do it tomorrow. Ask yourself, what is my motivation for doing this? I did that this morning, just now, and I'm like, don't need to share that. Today is not the day for schema therapy, but there will be a day, but for whatever reason, today is not the day. At least not in this. So, a lot of times, if you just give it time, when you're not sure, just give it time. Engage in the things that you know are going to help. And when you're not sure, give it time. Talk to a friend. And if you don't have any sort of trustworthy friends, go to an AA meeting or something. Talk to someone there. Lots of those around. Talk to your therapist. Journal. Do something self-therapy. And the answer will come. Should you do it or not? Is this the right job for you? You'd be amazed at how survival you really want. That job pays $25 an hour, you're getting paid $15, and the mind's like willing to ignore a lot of bad things, like the boss is horrible, bad reviews, this and that. And then you get the job, and then in 6 months you're like, I've missed that other job. At least, I was treated with respect, and wasn't harassed, and wasn't this, and wasn't that. But you turn blinders, right? Ask yourself what the motivation. And most of the time, our motivation is it's in child mode. Just want more money. Just want something sweet. I just want to feel good right now. You can even ask yourself, as you want to do this thing, nothing's working and you kind of want to keep trying, and you can just pause and take a breath and ask yourself this question. How old do I feel right now? How old do I feel right now? And if the answer isn't 30 or 40 or 60 or whatever age you are, ask yourself, probably better to wait. I really want to call my ex. Pause, breathe, ask yourself, how old do I feel right now? Really, and take the first answer that comes up. Ask your body, not your brain. Take the first answer that comes up. It's a magical question. And try listening to it, and see if maybe you spare yourself a little bit of stress. So, that's all I got today. Questions about that? This is a key part of listening to the universe. If you want to learn about low-stress living, I read this in an Eckhart Tolle book. If you watch two birds on a tree, and they're like having fights, and they're relaxing, and they're playing, and then they're fighting, nature is at very low stress. It's very harmonious. There's no arguments. Yeah, there's life and death, but it's whatever it is easy. It's not in conflict. A human struggles with the environment, changes this, forces everything. Nature just accepts how it is, because that bird doesn't have a brain big enough to anticipate and plan and do much more than what it's doing. But we do. That doesn't mean we should, though. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't trust that the universe has a plan. The universe maybe wanted me to talk about this today. Question?
Well, when you're talking about motivation, you say being childish. What I was going to say is fear.
Yep. Fear, anger, lust, control. There's like a million things, right? A lot of people do a lot of things out of fear, don't they? Interesting factoid about fear is, if you don't, you actually got to focus on it if you wanted to address it. But fear hides. So we can be very fearful, but it just hides. And if you can be in recovery 10 years and not focus on fear, and it'll hit you hard. So I've found fear crept up in my mind in all sorts of areas, and I'm like, well, I've been doing this a long time, and still it's there, here and there, pockets. It's a good one to explore. But people do a lot of bad things in fear. Fear of invasion, fear of not having enough. There's a saying, if you corner a dog, it's more likely to bite, right? That's just how it is. If you corner a human, it's no different. They're more likely to bite, lash out, do something. But humans are more clever about it. So then they can get into more things. You know, like childbearing. There's all sorts of things that drive us in sort of the survival mode. And survival mode is always a form of a child mode. And so it's helpful to ask yourself that. So that's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you. And if as always, I misspoke, I apologize. It is what it is.